Good evening, and thank you, TEDxArchivorum and Mia for inviting me to participate. I think this series of talk is quite compelling because in this terrible time of COVID, we have to rethink more than ever what we took for granted. And I'm going to try to demonstrate you by talking to you about the way I work, how my small passionate publishing venture can be related to sustainability. So what is an artist book? An artist book, it's not an art book. It's not a book on art. It's really a work of art in the form of a book. So here you can see a book that I've published with John Armleder, who hand-painted each of the tray case of the books. That's how I started, actually.
So you have this quote here. I've always imagined that paradise will be a kind of library. Does that contribute to your ethos in this process? How does it all work with your mindset?
Yes, actually, this is really, since I was a little girl, I love books. I was reading a lot. And every time I went to a place and didn't see any book, I thought it was like a body without a soul. I've been really a big reader. And when I was at university, we had a group of friends, and at night we were always talking and imagining how great it would be to make the books that we would dream to collect by associating writers and artists and so on. And one day we decided just to jump in the water and to start this venture, and that's how Coromandel Express started, and that's how I started. So what is really the view in this activity? It's to invite talents in very different fields: art, literature, science, design, graphic design, the more interdisciplinary possible, and multicultural also, to explore and create within the universe of book. So this is a book with Matt Colichot and Ornella Vorpsi and Philippe Kramer, who designed the tray case. And what is the aim of doing all this? The aim is to create encounters, confrontation between images, words, and materials, very central materials, and also open-ended dialogues between ideas, sensibilities, and culture, and disciplines also. So each project is developed at a very small pace, as you can imagine, directly with the artist, with a profound commitment, and involving all the participants to make the book. So for example, this is a drawing that Ernesto Neto, the Brazilian artist, did. They did many drawings to design a tray case of the book, which is here. And as you can see, it's also a very unusual tray case for a book, which totally relates to its content, and who was totally hand-stitched. So it's not a fast and furious work. It took, I think, 3 years to publish this book. And it's a book that you can wear on your skin because you can travel with it. So the actual invitation to the reader that we send is to create a mini universe, central universe, and that the reader can witness living collaboration between all these different participants, between the words, the images, the central discovery of the pages, and at his own rhythm. So the beauty of it is that the reader really has an active role. He can enter this collective choral dialogue, and he can also question things, and he can take the book, see some parts of it, and then several years after come back to it. So this is a little notebook that Wajdi Mouawad gave me with his text. It was a book on Beirut, and he was doing a theater play in Paris, and he said, well, I'm not sure that I will have to write the text, and so you have to wait until the end of the play in 2 months, and you come back, and either you have nothing or you have this text. And then I came back, and he gave me this beautiful notebook with this amazing text that is really poetry, and it was the first time that he allowed himself to write poetry because of the constraint of the format of the book, because his plays are always very, very long, for 3 hours, and based on mythology. So I think for him, it was the fact to tackle the artist book was really something important.
It strikes me that Sorry, it just strikes me that timing is quite important in your work. I've read in one of the earlier slides that you don't have a fixed deadline, which to me is just incredible. Why is that? Can you elaborate on that? Are deadlines not important, or is that just not part of your methodology?
Well, of course, deadline should be important, but the problem is if you really want to respect the work of each person, it's and especially artists, it's very, very difficult to have a deadline, because it's like a work is like a baby that is produced and it has to maturate, and sometimes it evolves in time and we change direction. And for example, this is a book that I did for MoMA with Annette Messager and Jean-Philippe Toussaint. And then Annette Messager sent her work to him, and then he had to write postcard in the course of 6 months. And then we reworked on the postcard. Annette reworked her drawing, and then we printed. So it's actually a very, very long process, and made with the heart and not very consciously timed.
Which I think is incredible in light of the current business models. For example, as I was saying in the beginning, it's all about how quickly can we produce content. And I think that the speed at which things are just sort of thrust onto consumers directly influences the quality. The best songs of all time are always the same every year, the best songs in history. And those are the songs that usually take the longest to write. And I guess what you're identifying here is, are you trying to make a product to sell, or are you trying to make a masterpiece? So I think that's really incredible that you won't allow a deadline to get in the way of an artist's vision. It's all about the soul of the process.
Yeah, I think we want to because a lot of people ask, what is it? Is it a book? Is it an object? No, it's neither a book nor an object. For me, it's really a mini universe. And for example, this image is one of a drawing of Prune Nourri, who designed the tray case of this book. But to arrive at this result, we had to do so many prototypes and so many studies. And she worked with this ceramist, an artisan in Fribourg. And it took also, you see here, Prune with the result. And most of the time, the artists are happy also, because I totally respect their work. And for me, it's really to give them carte blanche. So it's more an analogon of their thought than any rigid process. It's supposed to cure the world from its fragmentation, because now everything is really fragmented between discipline, between categories, and I think the world would be vision. So that's why I put this slide. Actually, I took this sentence from the artist JR, who is doing also an incredible work, but I think I have I'm going the other way, even though I totally respect and admire this work. He goes inside out, and I go outside in. So let me explain what do I mean for that. This is actually a master of kintsugi, and my truly belief is that if we start valuing the effect of a work made with passion and mindfulness in the silence of a studio or loneliness, it has a real impact on the whole energy of the world. So it doesn't have to be a multinational, it doesn't have to be a big ambitious work. I think if you do your own work with your heart and with a lot of constancy and of profoundness and of consciousness, I think finally it will have an impact on the world. So that's my last word.
It's absolutely beautiful. So I think my my Zoom dropped out for a good 5 minutes. I'm not really sure what happened. But I just wanted to quickly ask, building on this idea, obviously you're saying that we can't really live without books, and addressing this idea of ebooks and things. It is psychologically proven that the human mind does not engage with what it's reading when it's only through empirical, avenues. When you can actually feel the process, when you're writing in the book, that's how you engage with what you're learning, and you get transported into another world. So we can't really live without them, and they've been carrying culture for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I think, we can't live without them, but we do need to find a way to make the process more sustainable. Then I also think your work shows that you know, it really highlights this process because it's using so many senses and it's using so many concepts that, you know, the reader can live 1,000 lives in every book. And I think with your work, it's probably quite easy to see something new every time. And again, it's in itself constantly everlasting, very sustainable. So I think that's really powerful. I did want to ask, how many books do you usually make of each one that you make? How many, I guess you would call it a collection, how many are produced each time?
Usually there are edition of 30 copies because they're with original works of art, and as they're made with artisans and, you know, Japanese paper and complex printing processes, it's a little bit complicated to do otherwise. But I hope, even though they're made in small edition, because they are in the collection of some museums and exhibited sometimes, that people have the opportunity to discover it. And it happened, I saw some people, for example, look at the book of Beirut, and they were crying because they were so moved by the words of Wajdi Mouawad and the photograph of Gabriele Basilico. So for me, it's really the best satisfaction is to see that people are moved by the books, and also that they want to go further in their reflection, and so it's really a never-ending dialogue. It's not something that is set and that we propose. It's more like a germ that after can really grow as a plant or as a tree in people's mind. And
you have a question here, actually, saying, your books allow us to travel. Oh, sorry, it's not a question. There is another question which was asking where the ideas of each book come from. So it was asking if it was just you, or, you know, is it your ideas that force a book to happen, or how does that work?
Well, I usually contact the artists that I admire and that really touch me, and I think can challenge our perception and make us reflect in a beautiful way. And then I go to them and propose them to collaborate with a writer that comes from a different walk of life, but has a sensibility that also echoes their work in one way or another, even if it's a confrontation or a dialogue. And then I found a graphic designer who will work on the project, but every time a different person, so it can really also be more in sync, in tune with the particular project, and the same with a designer. And then everybody works on their side with the knowledge of the work of the other person. I mean, they know the essence of the work, but not the particular work that will be in the book. And then I orchestrate, but it's a very strange alchemy. At the end, it's some things really magical happen. It's very strange. For example, in the book of Beirut, Wajdi Mouawad made a poem about a face, the facade of a building, which is like a face with the eyes. And the photograph in the book of Gabriele Basilico is the facade of a cinema, and it is really like a face. So they were both really moved, and things like this happen all the time because it is really serendipity at the end. So it has its own life and its own way to develop.
Yeah, serendipity is all about a beautiful discovery, and I think every time someone looks at it and the amount of people that collaborate with you, there's obviously going to be new ideas every time. I find a question from Andrea Rigoseta, who asks if you've ever collaborated with a scientist.
Yes, actually, it's a very interesting question because I collaborated several times with scientists, but it's really my goal to do so more often, because I think the interdisciplinary dialogue is fundamental in all this. And so I collaborated with a neurologist who is the head of the Brain Institute and a psychiatrist on the book of Eros and the Pulsion of Death. And I worked with 20 artists that illustrated their text, and they wrote a text about the physiological nature of pulsion. So it was very interesting because it was the first time they tackled art. Even though they like art, they were never confronted to art. And they actually said that for them, it was very, very interesting experience because they say sometimes, especially in psychiatry, when you have very painful topics to develop with your patient, the words don't come out of their mouth because it's too painful. And if you show them works of art, then it derivates the problem, and then it creates a possible dialogue. And you say, well, this I will try to do it more often. And actually, it made me think that it would be really, really interesting to have in the museum, like therapeutic exhibition of art with themes and you know, works that would make people react in a different way. And now I would like to make a book on time, so I will also look for scientific who are specialized in physician in the time problem.
Fabulous. I have another question here that asks, how big are the print runs of the books?
The what, sorry?
The phrasing is how the print runs, that is the phrasing, but I presume...
yeah, it's the same. It's 30 copies.
30 copies. And I think this is a very interesting question, which asks, can the same image or book or etc. give a different message depending on where we are in our lives, what period of our life? And is that something you've observed maybe within yourself or with one of your readers?
Yes, totally. I think if I understand correctly, your question, you say when you discover the book once, you see you're more attracted by some aspect of the book. And then a few years later, you must discover other things that appeal more to you in this time of life. And I think this is the magic of the book also, is this interactive. And I think the reader, and Alberto Mangel explains it very well, the reader has as much an important role as the contributor of the book, as the writer, because it's a constant dialogue that you make with your brain, your conscious, and that's the magic of books.